For the longest time, the toughest part of VGC wasn't figuring out your 6 Pokemon or clicking the right moves, it was getting your Pokemon on cartridge. Between RNG abuse, soft resetting, or attending obscure Japanese events, building a team was a long and arduous process. This is no longer the case. In Sword and Shield, almost any random Pokemon can be turned into a competitive behemoth. In this series, we aim to prove just that. Every week, we'll get 3 Pokemon from Wonder Trade. We'll put together a team from just our Wonder Traded Pokemon and take on the Battle Stadium ladder and online tournaments with the eventual goal of top cutting a VGC Regional Championship. Welcome to Wonder Trade Topping. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. This is Wonder Trade Topping episode 4, and if you haven't seen the first 3 episodes, I definitely recommend you check them out. They have been a lot of fun and really lay out the premise for the series, which of course are also in the description. But to answer a question that I think some people have had is, what's going to happen now that Series 10 rules are announced, which take into effect about a month from now, where you're going to be playing with no Dynamax, and you're going to be playing with restricted Pokemon. And so kind of a throwback to Series 8, and I think that it's going to be really hard to execute this series in a format like that, partially because Dynamax allows you to use a lot of Pokemon that otherwise might not be used, but also because the restricted Pokemon really forced you to build your team around those. And the fun of this series really was being able to take any Pokemon and use it. And once we start using restricted Pokemon, games are going to be based around that restricted Pokemon. And unless we get those on Wonder Trade, which of course we are very unlikely to, it's just going to be really difficult, you know? It's not going to feel like the Wonder Traded Pokemon are the point of the team. And so I think that we're going to have some sort of grand finale at the end of this month. And then maybe pick us back up once the new games come out and we have a brand new format on the remakes of Diamond and Pearl. But we still have 4 more episodes before that happens, and we still have to get our second legendary Pokemon. And so that leads us back to the wheel. Of course, we won all 5 games last episode, which gives us access to 1 spin on the wheel and either Dynamax Adventures or legendary Pokemon based on what we roll. Alright, and here it is. We have taken Reggie Ice off the wheel. That is what we picked up last week, and of course decided that we really couldn't use that. But we're just going to go right into it and see what we get this time. Again, really going to influence which direction we take with our team, and just barely getting a Dynamax Adventure. And so I guess we're just going to hop right into Dynamax Adventures and see what we get. So jumping right into it, this is actually my second run through Dynamax Adventures. The first time around I found a Zygarde, which obviously isn't legal for Series 9, so I decided to run it again. Now, as you saw there, the Pokemon that we're getting here is a Psychic type, and so I obviously picked the Bug type right off the bat, and it is a Charge-a-Bug. And so this is actually a Pokemon that would be really good if we actually had to catch this instead of the legendary Pokemon, which is possible if we don't manage to actually catch the legendary Pokemon. I didn't actually catch the Zygarde, for example. That's one of the more difficult ones because of Power Construct. And that's because Charge-a-Bug, 1, is an electric type. It evolves into Vikavolt. And 2, it's a really solid Trick Room attacker. It's got a really high special attack stat, and it can really put in work potentially with our Rhyperior. Blossom, on the other hand, is probably not going to be a Pokemon that we're going to use. Now, going back, I think that the Psychic type, I was actually worried that this was also going to be a dead run because it was going to be a cover legendary, but in fact it wasn't, obviously. But you could imagine like a Mewtwo, a Lugia, a Necrozma potentially. But you know, here we see the Dunsparce again, not a Pokemon that I would pick up. It was very clearly going to be the Vikavolt or the cover legendary, but I did end up actually taking the Dunsparce along with me because I figured that would go better into the Psychic type rather than the Phalanx that I was using. And we do see the Psychic type is a Mesprit, so it is VGC legal, and honestly, Mesprit is a pretty cool Pokemon. It has never really seen competitive play in VGC, and that is largely because it's outclassed either in bulkier support roles by something like a Cresselia or maybe even Uxie, and in faster, more attack-oriented roles, it is outclassed by usually one of the Lotties or an Azelf even, although Azelf also hasn't seen play. But so it's kind of stuck in the middle where it doesn't really have a great niche in VGC. But for our series, that means it is more of a jack-of-all-trades Pokemon. It can do a lot of different things. It's got a good attack, special defense, and defense stat, so it is pretty bulky, and it's not that fast, but you know, it can hit on either side of the spectrum, and because our team was kind of mid-speed, where it could try to go faster or try to go slower depending on what we wanted to do, it actually fits quite well. It also learns Trick Room. It has a plethora of support moves that it can use, and so it definitely should see a spot on the team this week and potentially moving forward depending on the rest of the Pokemon that we get. If nothing else, I think that it would very easily fill the role that Gengar was filling earlier, where it set up Trick Room. It may or may not need the Focus Sash. It is a pretty bulky Pokemon, so it might be able to run something else instead, if something else wants the Focus Sash on the team. And yeah, I think that Mesprit is a really solid choice. I'm really excited to use it and jump into team building and see what we can do with it. So certainly can't complain about that, but we still got 3 more Pokemon to get. We still have to get Wonder Trading, and I'm sure I'll talk more about Mesprit in team building because I'm definitely going to try to fit it into whatever we end up using this week. But we still got 3 more Pokemon to get, and there's a lot of upgrades we can get to the team. Again, I've been saying this for a while. I would really like a Fire type so that we actually have some switch-ins. We don't have a ton of Fire resists. We have a couple Water types that aren't very strong. We have we don't have any ice resists on the team last episode, and we keep seeing ice types in these lower tiers, and so it would be really cool to have something like that. Maybe also having a powerful Trick Room abuser other than Rhyperior, or maybe like especially something like a Hatterene or an Indeedee would be really cool. Those just generally fit really well together, and as we move towards more of a Trick Room mode, those would definitely be very powerful. Same with Alolan Marowak, although I don't think you can actually breed one of those, so it's probably unlikely that we get one. I think that, there's just a lot of good, you know what, let's just get into it. There's a lot of good Pokemon. There's only one way to find out, and it does look like the first Pokemon is in a Safari Ball, maybe? Okay, so Roselia is actually a cool choice, because Roserade has been viable in VGC, especially in 2020 as a Grass type. Of course, we do have the Rillaboom already, so it's pretty unlikely that we end up using it over Rillaboom, but Roserade had a really cool niche on the Lapras teams as something that could not only click Sleep Powder, but also really threatened the Rotom Wash, and really threatened the Clefairies and Togekisses that were giving it problems with redirection. And so I remember that when I was playing against Lapras teams, I found them really easy to beat, except for the Roserade versions. Those were really scary. And so it's cool to see one, and maybe we'll get to use it. I don't know. Rillaboom is going to be really hard to drop given how powerful it is and how much our team needs that cleanup Pokemon. But moving on to the second Pokemon, we got one. Oh, we got one. Oh my god. Okay, so Charmander is obviously a sick get because it's a starter, right? And Charizard is insane. Charizard sees VGC play pretty much every single time it's legal. You will see Charizard be 2018, Fringe play in 2019, 2020 for sure. Won the first regional of the year, and it still was really viable even in Series 8. We just the Gmax Charizard is so powerful. It lets us play with Umbreon. It's got great synergy with Umbreon. It lets us play with Rillaboom really effectively. This is really just everything we could ask for, especially as our team slowly becomes more and more offensive. It also allows us to really abuse Inteleon, for not necessarily for the reasons you would think, but just because, not because of starters or pledges or soak or anything like that, just because it gives us a second form of speed control to make sure that Charizard does outspeed everything. We are weak to Regieleki. We do have a bunch of ground types we can use, and also Rillaboom is going to help against Regieleki, but oh man, Charizard's absolutely insane. Oh, this is a fantastic upgrade already. I mean, we just got a lot of team building to go, but we got one more Pokemon too, and we're getting. I don't even know what to say. We got, oh man, that's insane. We're getting a full Sun team. Where's the Torkoal? Wow. Okay. Okay. So now this is maybe the only Grass type that could compete with Rillaboom, right? It is Venusaur. It's got, Venusaur dominated Series 8 as well. It's got Sleep Powder if you choose not to max it, powerful moves all around to Grass. If they give it Earth coverage, ground coverage with Earth Power, which, really made it so much better than it was back in previous generations. And that ground Grass, sometimes like Fire or Water with Weather Ball and Poison coverage, is really, really strong. Sleep Powder is always threatening, and your opponent has to play a lot of mind games because you can always just click Sleep Powder. Somehow Venusaur is maybe the strongest enabler for Trick Room teams because when you have a Torkoal, right? Because Torkoal is so good on Trick Room teams, but Venusaur allows you to Sleep Powder Trick Room really safely, and your opponent has to respect that option, as well as the option for you just to max the Venusaur and start putting residual damage in for your powerful late game Pokemon to clean up that way. Man, what a crazy set of Pokemon to get. I mean, this is it overlaps a little bit more than I'd like with our other good Pokemon. But and not having a Sunsetter is a little disappointing. But you know what? Maybe we can put something together. Like Mesprit probably gets Sunny Day. Just having Trick Room, Venusaur, Charizard, Rhyperior it's already an insane team. So we're. I thought we were going to get a something that looks like a real VGC team, a viable VGC team, maybe a couple months into the series, but I didn't think we'd get it 4 weeks in, and now we're one Pokemon away, basically. So I guess to pull up the Pokemon, I totally forgot I'm supposed to do that. So to pull them up, the Roselia somehow, this is a cool Pokemon. I think this is one of my favorite Pokemon from Gen 3, but probably not going to see as much play now that we have a much better grass poison type on the team. But very, very cool. We got the Charmander. So let's see, it is Blaze, but we can obviously make that Solar Power, which is the better ability almost all the time. We're gonna make it Gigantamax, and it's gonna do a lot of damage. And then lastly, of course, the Bulbasaur are going to turn it into a Venusaur. This one's from Pokemon Go, and again, you really want the Chlorophyll ability, which is hidden ability, but there's no doubt there. We can very easily change that. Wow, what a crazy set of Pokemon to grab. I'm very happy with this, and I'm gonna go team build right now, and we'll pop back in when I got the team ready. All right, we are back, and as you can see, we are making full use of our new additions. Maybe not so much the Venusaur, but I didn't think I could commit to a full Sun mode without a Torkoal or a Ninetales at least. We need some way to consistently set up Sun. We do have Sunny Day on the Gengar, but that's not going to be something that we click all the time. It's something that we click some of the time when we do have a lot of momentum on our side, when we feel like the Charizard has the ability to run through the team. But really, how this team wants to win the game is by abusing residual damage. The Gmax Wildfire effect is absolutely broken. We've seen it over and over again, dominating metagames. And that's really how I'd like to be able to power through teams. The main combo is the Charizard and the Umbreon. The Umbreon, of course, is really good at punishing field presence, and Dynamax is a form of field presence. Your opponent really needs to stay on the field for 3 turns to make full use of their Dynamax, and so if we can put them to sleep or lower their special attack, a lot of times their Dynamax is going to be somewhat wasted, right? And so that's kind of the goal, is once we get our Gmax Wildfire up, our opponent feels obligated to Dynamax, or else they are taking so much residual damage, and if they Dynamax, Umbreon is there to punish that right away. That's kind of how these teams worked in Series 8, and I hope that it'll work a lot similarly in Series 9, even though the metagame is a little harder to, use in Series 9 because the metagame has sped up a lot. Now, we are not going to be a Life Orb Charizard, largely because we don't think that Charizard can power through the team. It doesn't have solar power on a regular basis. Saying that you're going to get Sunny Day off with Gengar regularly is pretty greedy. I don't want to have to do that to make our team function. And so instead, it's just going to be the Assault Vest set, so it can maybe live an attack or 2. This is the Charizard that I've personally seen be the most successful in Series 9. I think the Life Orb is probably better suited on something that can do more damage right away when it Dynamaxes. And so, of course, that is our secondary mode, which is still the Trick Room mode, but now we have a little bit more of a better Trick Room setter. The Mesprit is probably a more natural fit for the role of Trick Room setter because it is a bulkier Pokemon. It probably will not get O-Code, but anything short of a Max Phantasm or a Max Darkness, and even then, again, it's got a lot of bulk. Now, it probably could be a more bulk invested Mesprit. We'll see how it goes, but really, I don't think I need anything else. I think that the Umbreon and the Rillaboom with Fake Out is going to do enough to stop our opponents from fully taking advantage of the double target ability with Dynamax and KOing us. Again, Umbreon is so good at punishing early game Dynamaxes that if our opponent does do that, hopefully they've just burned their Dynamax into a Mesprit. Maybe we even switch it out, and so we'll take full advantage of that. That's the goal, at least. And so, of course, that mode is generally going to be Mesprit with Rhyperior in the back, and then Rillaboom to clean up games, and then one of Gengar, Charizard, and Umbreon. Charizard's also not bad at cleaning up games. Spread Heat Wave is still a really strong move. It's got great coverage. Gengar is also pretty decent because of how it interacts with things like Rillaboom that are very often in the back, or things like Tapu Fini that are often in the back. However, Charizard I think is going to be the most common one because things like Celesteela and Registeel are pretty common. And so the other mode, of course, is going to be the Charizard mode, where our goal is to power through our opponent's team, not with Charizard, but with residual damage, allowing everything to go down to, 40% health, which allows Rillaboom with a Miracle Seed instead of an Assault Vest this time to kind of clean up the game from there. Of course, we are very weak to the Landorus Therian, I think, and so that's why Mesprit has Ice Beam, that's why Gengar has Icy Wind, just a lot of ways to potentially put pressure on that, because realistically, especially if it has a Lumberry, and so it can, take 2 turns to burn Umbreon's Yawn and then force it to Yawn again, that's not sustainable, right? And it can OHKO basically everything else on our team. We really need to either be able to get Trick Room up in front of it and then do a lot of damage with Rhyperior, or be able to just Ice Beam it with Mesprit to knock it out right away, and so that's kind of what I'm going for there. Again, probably could be a little bulkier, but we'll see if we get punished for that. And yeah, so that's the team. I'm hoping that it does well. This is obviously completely different from our team in the past, and so it probably will be a bit of a learning curve, but we still are in like Great Ball rank to start out, so I don't think that it should be too bad. I think I will be able to find a way to maneuver, because this time we have the tools. We have a lot of bulky Pokemon, a lot of good damage dealers. Like, I think this team can very easily get us into Ultra Ball and potentially beyond that. And so jumping into the first match of the day, we are actually in Great Ball Tier 9. I believe that Ultra Ball rank starts in Tier 10, so we are 1 tier away from there. And our first opponent is actually already in Ultra Ball Tier, in rank 10. And so we get a taste of what Ultra Ball teams look like, and let me tell you, they look a lot better than Great Ball teams. This team is a full-fledged Sun team. It's got the Charizard, Torkoal, Venusaur. It's also got Indeedee, Blastoise, and a Regieleki on it. And so I figure, Assault Vest Charizard is amazing into opposing Sun teams. The Rhyperior in Trick Room is also really good into Sun teams. And so I figure I'm pretty okay into the Sun mode. And then the only answer that I have to Blastoise is going to be Rillaboom, and so I have to bring that as well. Now, it was probably a mistake to lead the Rillaboom. I probably should have figured out what the Blastoise was trying to do, but I figured it might be a support variant and that I need to pressure with Rillaboom, but obviously leading Rillaboom into a team with Indeedee is generally a bad idea. And so, of course, they lead Indeedee Blastoise, and here I figure out what the Blastoise is. Of course, it wants to click Shell Smash with the support from the Indeedee, and of course, my Rillaboom has its terrain set up first, so that means I don't have Fake Out Pressure, my Rillaboom is faster. And so here, my game plan is to click Gmax Wildfire into the Indeedee, and click U-Turn into the Indeedee, switch out, hopefully KO it with the Wildfire chip, but as you can see, I don't have U-Turn on this set. And so I do the worst possible thing. I don't even time out and click Grassy Glide. That would have been preferable. Instead, I click Fake Out, because that is in the slot that U-Turn would have been, and I was panicking as I timed out. And so I look like a total idiot trying to fake out this Blastoise in Psychic Terrain. And the Gmax Wildfire does go off, and so here I'm in a really bad spot. The original game plan was the Blastoise is going to be at -1, the Rillaboom is going to be in a position to reset its grassy terrain, and then I can Grassy Glide and KO this -1 Blastoise that has taken some chip because of Wildfire. But instead, they just get the free Shell Smash off. The Rillaboom is still on the field, doing absolutely nothing. And, we're not in a great spot. So I have to switch the Rillaboom out. I didn't have time to do that after I realized I didn't have U-Turn, so I have to hard switch this turn. And so the Mesprit comes in, and the Blastoise, of course, Dynamaxes. Now, I'm hoping that the Blastoise is, timid, and I get a roll to live the attack with the Assault Vest Charizard or something along those lines. Of course, Modest will always knock you out, and, naturally, they go for the Gmax Cannonade. They also go for the Follow Me in case Rillaboom stayed in, but the Gmax Cannonade is obviously enough to KO this Charizard. I was being really optimistic, but realistically, I don't think I needed the Charizard anymore. I just needed the Rillaboom. The Rillaboom was the key. A lot of times, all you need to do is set up the Wildfire, get that chip damage going, and then you're in an okay spot to win the game. Of course, they also have the chip damage going, but you can see how much damage that is doing to that Indeedee. It is going to hopefully be enough. And so here, I figure they have to target the Rillaboom. The Rillaboom is obviously the threat, and so I protect the Rillaboom. Obviously, I don't have U-Turn because I have Protect, and so, I guess it's kind of a fair trade-off. And then I decided I'm going to go for a Trick Room, because if I get a Trick Room off, then I can KO the Indeedee with my Mesprit first, because the Mesprit is slower than the Rillaboom, and then use a Wood Hammer to KO the Blastoise in terrain. And they go for a Max Wormwind, which reduces Rillaboom's attack. Also, why Max Wormwind? I don't know. I don't know what possible Dragon move Blastoise would be deciding to run, but Ultra Ball Tier, it's slightly better than Great Ball Tier. And so they go for a Helping Hand with their Indeedee. I guess they were never getting an attack off with it anyways. I get the Ice Beam off to KO it, of course, and then the Wood Hammer does come out from the Rillaboom, and naturally that on this -1 Blastoise, now granted I am also at -1, but the -1 Blastoise does go down to the Wood Hammer in terrain, and actually somehow, despite that really miserable mistake on turn 1, we are in a fantastic spot. And we're actually in an okay spot. If they brought in Torkoal right here, you would have to do a lot of damage in the end game, but thankfully we don't see the Torkoal in Trick Room. Instead, we see the Regieleki, we see a Venusaur, and these Pokemon are not going to do enough. I do end up protecting the Mesprit just in case the Venusaur gets to live and attack or somehow like is min speed, and then I just need to guarantee that I get a Psychic off into it, and the only way that the Mesprit was going down is if the Regieleki also got an attack off on it, so I decided I was using my Rillaboom to KO the Regieleki, and then I was going to win with my Rhyperior and my Mesprit. And, Rhyperior, pretty powerful Pokemon, not intimidated, Life Orb damage, high horsepower, gets the knockout on Venusaur anyways. And so with that, we win our first game. Again, despite that pretty miserable mistake on turn 1, we still managed to find a way to navigate around that situation and win the game. And so moving into our second game of the day, we face our last Great Ball tier player, assuming we win this game, in Dose-E, and their team, again, you can kind of see the difference here. This team looks a lot less competitive. There is a Cinderace, a double fighting type, and Urshifu and Sirfetch'd. There's a Grimmsnarl. That is a real, like, all these Pokemon have seen VGC play. They're not unreasonable, but they're not actually that scary, except for the Garchomp. As I mentioned in team preview, Landorus is kind of a problem for this team. The only way of hitting it really is the Mesprit, and so the Garchomp is just as scary, except it also outspeeds Charizard. So really, the Garchomp was the thing that scared me, but they don't end up bleeding it. They end up bleeding the Cinderace and the Grimmsnarl. And so from here into my Mesprit and Umbreon lead, I figure I can either get Trick Room up or I can get a Yawn off onto the Cinderace. And either way, I'm pretty okay. They have to double target Pokemon to get a knockout. And so the Cinderace goes for a G-Max Fireball. Again, this is actually fantastic. I was really scared of a Max Knuckle and a Spirit Break into the Umbreon, or maybe like a Max Knuckle and a Taunt into Mesprit. But instead, you see that the Grimmsnarl, did attack because it did go after the Cinderace, and the combination of G-Max, Fireball, and Foul Play is enough to knock out Mesprit, so no Trick Room for me, but that's kind of okay, because I get a Yawn off into their Dynamax, into their Cinderace, and so this Pokemon is not going to get as much value. The entire point of Cinderace is you're going to be stacking a lot of boosts onto this one Pokemon, and hopefully that Pokemon and his partner is enough to kind of steamroll through your opponent's team, but if it's sleeping, it's not really going to do that. Also, Rhyperior can tank any of its attacks. It didn't really get any boosts on turn 1 because they clicked Pyro Ball, or G-Max Fireball instead of a Max Knuckle. And so the Max Airstream that goes into Umbreon, potentially they don't even have a fighting move. The Max Airstream goes into the Umbreon, does very little damage. Actually, it does like over half damage, but that's relatively little damage for a Dynamax move. And then the Foul Play goes off into the Rhyperior. Again, that one really does very little damage. And I go for a Moonlight. I figured they were always targeting the Umbreon, and so if the Umbreon was living the turn, it was going to get a way to heal back up. No matter what, I was obviously slower than both other Pokemon. And then I go for a Max Knuckle. I figured the Cinderace is either going to sleep or it's switching out, one of the two. And so either way, I really want to target the slot that isn't the Cinderace, just in case. And the Cinderace goes to sleep. The Grimmsnarl takes like 70% health from that Max Knuckle, and so here I decide I want to switch out the Umbreon. I want to give something else the Max Knuckle boosts. I also decided that not to click Max Quake or Max Rockfall because there's no special attackers on their team other than Toxtricity, and so I really didn't need it. The special defense boosts on the Rhyperior. And so they go for another Foul Play. This obviously is going to do a lot more damage this time because I am at +1. I go for another Max Knuckle, giving that Rillaboom the attack boosts, KOing the Grimmsnarl. Maybe I was supposed to just KO the Cinderace outright, but my idea was, I bring the Rillaboom in, it's a +1 attack, and also the Cinderace's Dynamax ends, and so even if they get a one-turn wait, I have the ability to fake them out if their back Pokemon isn't threatening. I probably should have figured out that almost every single Pokemon they have in the back is threatening. The Urshifu is especially threatening because it is a water Urshifu. And so that means that it always has the ability to KO this Rhyperior with a Surging Strike, and I have to fake it out. That being said, it also goes down to a Grassy Glide on the next turn. I just didn't want to play into a Focus Sash Urshifu by going for a Grassy Glide right off the bat. And so I go for a Max Rockfall into the Cinderace, guaranteeing the KO. Of course, if the Cinderace woke up right there and got the one-turn wake and managed to KO the Rillaboom with like a Pyro Ball, that would have been really bad. But instead, of course, that didn't happen, and I got the KO. Now, That also means that they get another switch in, they get the Surfetched in, but the Surfetched is a lot less scary, especially knowing that I will always KO this Urshifu with a Grassy Glide. Maybe if they went for a Protect, I might have been in a sticky situation, but even then I KO'd the Surfetched with a Rhyperior attack, and I was in an okay spot still. But the Grassy Glide does go, immediately take out the Knockout, and the Poison Jab comes out from the Surfetched and doesn't KO the Rillaboom, despite the fact that they get a critical hit. And so that's a pretty good indicator that we were in a good spot. The High Horsepower comes out from Rhyperior and KOs the Surfetched off the bat, no problem. And so we are 2-0 that quickly. And I actually did go and check the Urshifu set. I was curious. And you did see Detect is Choice Scarf. It had Detect, and it was a Choice Scarf variant. So, Great Ball tier, that's the kind of thing that we're going to see. And thankfully, we are no longer in Great Ball tier. We are now in Ultra Ball tier. And so we get to see what Ultra Ball tier has to offer. Obviously, we had one game against an Ultra Ball tier opponent already. And our second game against those opponents, our third game of the day, is against a team that you might recognize. I did not recognize this in team preview. And I want you to sound off in chat if you know this team right now. Pause the video and tell me if you know this team, because I will tell you about this team a little later. So the team is Regieleki, Dusclops, Tapu Bulu, Glastrier, Heatran, and Landorus, and I decided that I can't bring Charizard into Landorus Heatran and Regieleki, although Regieleki is less of a problem, and so I have to go with the Rhyperior mode. I am really scared of the Dusclops burning the Rhyperior. That is probably the way that they win the game. I have zero counterplay to that, but I still have to commit to it because the Charizard felt really bad, and they lead the Dusclops and they lead Regieleki. And so here I say, okay, they have the freest Voltwish Trick Room into Glastrier of their lives. They have to go for this play. Also, we see Frisk, which is already better than the Dusclops we've seen in the last two episodes, where they're both pressure in the last two episodes. So, but they actually just maxed the Eleki. I was really surprised by that, because we could just have Rhyperior in the back. What if we just switch the Rhyperior in, And they go for a Helping Hand. So they just immediately decide this Regieleki is going to go in. It's going to be the way they win the game. And they go for a Max Strike into the Mesprit, which immediately picks up the Knockout. Now, that being said, they did get a critical hit. They also reveal a Life Orb. And so I don't know if the critical hit mattered. Either way, I'm just relieved that they didn't click Max Lightning because I clicked Yawn with Umbreon. Again, I thought they were going to Volt Switch into Glastrier. I wanted to immediately stall out the Trick Room turrets, immediately put pressure on them. And so the Yawn goes off into the Regieleki, into their Dynamax. And that means that now I switch in Rillaboom and I immediately switch in the Umbreon, the Rhyperior for the Umbreon, trying to bait them into a Max Lightning, into a Ground type, hopefully meaning that they will go to sleep. Obviously, going to sleep isn't the biggest deal because I still have a Rhyperior on the field in front of the Regieleki, but something like a Helping Hand Max Strike into Rillaboom would have been really bad. And so I actually considered Max Guarding with Rillaboom, but I decided I needed the Rhyperior to Dynamax. And so I also go for a Wood Hammer. Again, the scary thing for me is a Will-O-Wisp coming out, and so I decided that the Dusclops is a threat that I have to take down. I go for the Wood Hammer into what was the Dusclops slot, but of course, they went for the Ally Switch. This is a ladder, of course, and so the double up goes into the Regieleki that was asleep, not really where I wanted to target because I felt like it was kind of dead weight after its Dynamax ended, but it did take out the KO, and the Dusclops is still in the field. They bring in Tapu Bulu, and Tapu Bulu in grassy terrain is, of course, Rhyperior's worst nightmare, other than, a Rillaboom in grassy terrain, so I can't Dynamax it like I wanted to. Instead, I have to click Protect. I could have switched it out, but I decided that I wasn't allowed to because my win condition here was to get Rhyperior outside of grassy terrain. And so I think there were 3 turns left, and so if I protected this turn, then I could switch it out, and then I could switch it back in on the other slot, and then grassy turn would be over, and I wouldn't feel forced to switch the Rillaboom in to the Umbreon that was about to go down. There was no chance they could take it out in that short time period. And so they did reveal the Glastrier as their last Pokemon, and so I go for a Protect here. I'm really afraid of the Glastrier, of course, clicking Icicle Crash. I switch out into the Umbreon, and they do correctly Horn Leech. And here's the moment where I realize what team I'm facing. The Glastrier goes for an Iron Defense. Now, this is a team that did really well in the latter stage of Japan Nationals. That, of course, the first stage was a ladder tournament, and it had... this is the only time I've seen Tapu Bulu being used in the entirety of Series 9, but more notably, it had the Iron Defense Body Press Glastrier. And so I finally figured out what I was facing, and I also made the play of switching in the Rillaboom into the Rhyperior, and they make that read and correctly KO it, and so now I'm in an awful spot. But, so of course, the Grassy Train does actually expire. They get a second Iron Defense off, but I get a Yawn off into the Glastrier, so now it is about to go to sleep. I can't really do anything because I have fake out pressure, but as you saw, the grassy turn expired and then came back on because I switched into the Rillaboom again. And so my plan almost worked. I was so close, but I called the slot wrong. And so they go for a Protect on top of Bulu. I don't know why. I was always faking out this Glastrier. It had the ability to get a +4 body press into either one of my Pokemon, and I couldn't let that happen. And then I go for a Snarl. I was still kind of scouting out which one was going to do more damage, whether Snarl was going to do more damage, or whether Foul Play was going to do more damage into, again, +4 Glastrier, but that did very little. And so from there I realized, okay, I need to get a critical hit to win the game. Also, there's leftovers, and so here I have to get a critical hit on this +4 Glastrier. I have like 3 chances to do it, right? Like as long as they stay asleep, as long as I'm Dynamax, I have a chance to do it. Either crit will do it. I'm pretty sure crit Foul Play will put me in range. That like max overgrowth did a decent amount of damage. We're slowly chipping away. So turn 1, no critical hit. That was the guaranteed sleep turn. Second sleep turn, no critical hit. They take their second sleep turn, no 1-turn wake. That's good. Okay? And so they go for a Dazzling Gleam with Bulu. They finally reveal it. I don't know why they weren't clicking it the entire time. Third sleep turn, no critical hit. They are so low on health, and they get the 3-turn sleep. So we are still in this. Of course, Rillaboom's Dynamax ends. They have leftovers, and they click Protect. So they wake up, as they always will. They go for Dazzling Gleam, and they click Protect. The Wood Hammer goes into Protect. The Foul Play goes into Protect. This is it. The last chance. We have to get a critical hit on this turn to have a chance of winning the game. They go for Dazzling Gleam. Rillaboom, of course, lives. The Wood Hammer comes out. It does not enough damage. Not a critical hit. We do live, though. Because it wouldn't crit, we lived. Foul Play comes out. Gets the crit. It gets the critical hit. The Glastrier goes down. And all of a sudden, we win the game. Now, that being said, the Tapu Bulu is still a little bit of a problem. It obviously outspeeds the Rillaboom. It has a chance to KO with Dazzling Gleam. The Umbreon should 1v1 it. However, because I took so much time to KO this Glastrier, I took a long time to think through my moves. And also, I thought about playing the timer endgame before realizing that was just not a possibility. I really was running out of time, and there was a chance that the Tapu Bulu could win on timer. Now, I do get the double Protect on the Rillaboom, which is really valuable. You see the 3 minutes left, but that also just meant that there was one fewer turn that Umbreon had to take a single target Dazzling Gleam. I get the Yawn off after getting a Moonlight off, and then I get Foul Play off, and from here, timer is in my favor because one Moonlight guarantees me a great spot. Now, I should have probably Moonlighted there and then Foul Played the next turn. Instead, I went for the Foul Play, knowing that I would live one attack even if it woke up this turn. Then I get the Moonlight off. And from here, no matter what, I basically win the game. I can just keep going for Moonlight over and over again, and I will win on a percentage of total HP. I do end up going for the Foul Play once again. And, you know, there they forfeit. They realize they don't have a chance to win the game because I was timer stalling. And so, crazy game. What a crazy game. Came down. We had 6 chances to get a critical hit, and we got it on the 6th try. So that was just absolutely nutty. But wow, yeah, okay. So moving on to the 4th game, and we see that we are facing a Colossal team. This shouldn't be too surprising. Why would you be playing on ladder if you weren't using Colossal? You better be prepared for Colossal. That's the best team in Series 9, right? And so we aren't prepared for Colossal. We got rid of the Inteleon. We don't have great ways to hit the Colossal, and so I'm kind of panicking a little bit. I really don't know. Even going into turn 1, I really don't know how I'm going to beat this Colossal. I decide that Rhyperior is not something I can bring because they have the Rain mode and it is just absolutely awful into that. And so I decided that the Rillaboom is going to have to KO the Colossal, and the Rillaboom can only do that by Dynamaxing. Obviously, Dynamaxing it into the Rain mode is pretty good as well. And then it just has to, do a lot of damage. I don't know. Like I still had not figured out how I was going to win this game. Of course, the Colossal Dynamaxes. Mesprit goes for a Protect. And so here I figure, are they going to target the Umbreon or are they going to target the Mesprit? If they target the Umbreon, I'm allowed to click Trigger. If they target the Mesprit, I have to call it, and of course they go for the Surf. And then if I call it correctly, then the Umbreon can click Yawn into the Colossal. And even though the Colossal is going to get its rocks up, it is not going to be able to power through my team, which is really all I can ask for. And so the Colossal does target the Mesprit, which means that we call this correctly. We got the turn 1 read correct, and we got the Yawn off into the Gmax Colossal. Now, again, this is still not a great spot. They still get one more turn off. They can switch out if they want to. And not on top of that, they still got their Gmax Volclip off. They're still doing a ton of damage to us every single turn. Now, granted, Umbreon has recovery. If we switch Rillaboom in, it also starts generating recovery. They switch out the Dragapult into the Tapu Fini, and so I realized that they have to do that in this situation to stop the Colossal from going to sleep. They don't actually have to, but they were probably going to. And I realized I have to switch my Rillaboom in. Now, both Pokemon are slower than Dragapult, so either one could switch out, and it would switch in after the Tapu Fini. And I have to call which slot they're going to target again, because if Rillaboom goes down, I lose the game. And I decide they're targeting the Mesprit. They targeted the Mesprit last turn. They are scared of the Mesprit for whatever reason, not scared of the Umbreon. They're going to target the Mesprit. And apparently, they don't know that Mesprit has Levitate. So they go for a Max Quake into it. And, Volclith goes off, the Grassy Terrain goes off, we get Citrus Berry, but more importantly, the Colossal goes to sleep. So we're still in this game, the Colossal's asleep, we have our Rillaboom on the field, which is our primary Dynamax target, and I think they switch out the Fini because they expect us to attack into it, also because, they want to turn off our terrain at some point in the game. They switch in Dragapult, and we immediately Dynamax the Rillaboom, because that is our win condition. And so we Dynamax Rillaboom, and we immediately target down this Colossal. The Colossal, of course, stays asleep for its guaranteed sleep turn, but I really don't want to risk a one-turn wake, and so I figure I have to KO it here. And so I go for that G-Max Drum Solo into the Coal. We don't have a ground move. I think I maybe am supposed to have a ground move on this Rillaboom because I am Dynamaxing it quite often. The G-Max Overgrowth is not enough to KO, or whatever it's called, G-Max Drum Solo, but the Psychic is enough to KO from that low HP bar. And so we are finally done with this Colossal threat after two really hard reads on turn 1 and turn 2. We somehow put ourselves in a pretty okay position. And of course comes out the Ally Switch. Why wouldn't there be an Ally Switch? And so the Urshifu goes for a close combat. This does a decent chunk of damage, but obviously I was targeting down the Urshifu. That was the scary Pokemon. The Dusclops potentially had Will-O-Wisp, but I wouldn't think you'd run Will-O-Wisp on Dusclops when you have a Tapu Fini on the team. So I figured the Dusclops was not going to do much. They also show the Citrus Berry, and they also immediately learn why Citrus Berry is an awful item on Dragapult, because it just immediately goes down to the Psychic, right? And for Citrus Berry to do anything, you have to take an attack, and then take a second attack with the Citrus Berry, and it also had to not have taken that attack without Citrus Berry, and that just never happens. Dragapult is not a bulky enough Pokemon to take advantage of that, and so hopefully they learned their lesson there when Mesprit Psychic took it out after Citrus Berry, and they switched into Tapu Fini, which is their last Pokemon. And so here, they go for the close combat, and they go for the Moonblast into the Rillaboom. They have the double target. I figure here, if I get a Psychic off, or if I get the G-Max Drum Solo off into Tapu Fini, either one will win me the game, so I don't do anything too drastic. But in fact, I actually live both attacks. Thank you, based Rillaboom, and immediately KO this Tapu Fini, despite there being Mystery Terrain up. And I also get a Psychic off into the Urshifu. The Urshifu does end up being Focus Sash, but they have one Pokemon left. We have 3. I think we're going to win this game, and they do actually forfeit the game from there. And so, to recap, we won a crazy game against a Colossal team where we needed 2 hard reads on turn 1 and 2 to have a chance. We won an insane game against an Iron Defense Galastrier. We won despite misclicking Fake Out in Psychic Terrain turn 1 in game 1. What a crazy set of games today, and it only gets crazier. Now, this team doesn't look too crazy. It does have a Latias, which is the best Charizard counter in Generation 7, but obviously they can't Mega this time around. But more importantly, they have a Garchomp, and the Garchomp is the Pokemon that we talked about earlier that is really scary for this team. We had very few answers to, and we really needed to rely on Mesprit. The rest of the team is pretty Charizard weak, so hopefully Charizard can power through, with the exception of course, the Latias and the Garchomp, which, of course, they both lead. And so that's not a great place for Charizard to be, so I switch it out. This is also the first time that I brought Gengar onto the field, at least, and so I didn't realize that I had forgotten to change its moves. And so it still has the Icy Wind Trick Room set rather than the Sunny Day set. So it really isn't as good with Charizard as I would have liked it to be. Not that I got to click it there. Icy Wind is pretty good, in fact. Icy Wind hits both Pokemon super effectively, makes them slower than a Charizard, but of course they went for a Tailwind to get back faster. The Rock Slide did a decent chunk of damage to both Pokemon, and it was actually ended up being really important. So the Rillaboom comes in to try to take a potential Earthquake. Of course, the Earthquake gets halved in grassy terrain, but also like all the other Pokemon are immune to it on the field right now. And of course, the Earthquake does come out, does very little to the Rillaboom because, it is a grass type and also in grassy terrain. I was also afraid of the Psychic, and the Rillaboom is probably our best switch in there because the Mesprit is on the field. And so here I decide that I don't actually want to KO the Garchomp. Maybe that was a mistake, but I decide that I want to take 2 KOs at once rather than giving something like a Kartana a free switch in Tailwind. That would be really bad. And so instead, after they go for an Icy Wind to do a little bit of chip damage, I go for an Ice Beam into the Latias slot. I figured that's the slot that is a little scarier. I want to get 2 KOs this turn, and so this turn, I go for a Grassy Glide into the Latias, and I go for an Ice Beam into the Garchomp, hoping to pick up 2 KOs. Now, the Grassy Glide does go into the Latias and does pick up a KO, but the Ice Beam obviously is not going to do very much into a Torkoal. And so from here, that means that they get what they want. They get their free switch in. Thankfully, that does mean that their free switch in has to give boosts to a Torkoal rather than a Garchomp, or a Latias, which would be really scary. But it still is a free switch into a Kartana in Tailwind when both of my Pokemon don't really pressure it. Also, I can't really click Trigger him because there's a Torkoal on the field, right? And so here I really want them to take a KO on one of my Pokemon. And so I protect the Rillaboom and hope that they decide to go for like an Eruption to KO Mesprit. Ideally, they double it up. But instead, they go for an Airstream. And the Airstream does very little because it is, not Stab. It is presumably an Assault Vest Kartana. And the Torkoal doesn't go for the Eruption like I wanted it to either. As for Mesprit, of course, gets the Citrus Berry recovery, so it is healing back up. And the Torkoal goes for a Burning Jealousy instead. And so the Burning Jealousy does like a decent chunk, but I really needed it to KO because now they're in a position where they can take 2 free KOs. Also, Mesprit actually outsped there by that +2 Torkoal, gets a Psychic off. +2? +1? I forget. Anyways, Mesprit oddly outsped by Torkoal, gets the Psychic off and does very little damage. Still good damage, still ways to chip it down, and then everything gets healing because of grassy terrain, and the Tailwind expires, and that's the important part because now the Charizard needs 1 Airstream boost to outspeed Garchomp. And so that's kind of the end game here, is that maybe Charizard can pull it back, but the Kartana is going to freely KO every other Pokemon on my team, and I have no way to stop it. In hindsight, maybe I was supposed to switch out the Rillaboom into the Gengar here and sack the Gengar, but instead I decide I want to get a Wood Hammer off. I want to put as much damage into this Torkoal before the Rillaboom goes down. And so, yeah, actually, I guess the Kartana was at +1 speed, and the Torkoal was at +1 speed, so I don't know why it outsped Mesprit. That is really strange, huh? And it didn't outspeed the Rillaboom at +2. And so the Gengar does come in, the Charizard comes in, and the Charizard, of course, goes for the Gigantamax. Now, again, I need to get to +1 speed, because otherwise the Garchomp will outspeed me, and it will immediately knock me out. And the Gengar really has no recourse. It doesn't have Protect. I really have nothing to do with this Gengar, but the Torkoal goes for a Protect. And so here I think they might have just thrown, because if I had KO'd the Torkoal with a Max Airstream, then I have to KO, the next turn I have to KO the Garchomp with an attack from Charizard, and then they get 2 attacks off because of that with their Kartana, right? And they were hoping that 2 Aerial Aces, would be enough to KO the Charizard. If they had a Protect on Garchomp, they would get 3 attacks off. However, because they went for a Protect, I thought I might win, because now I get my Airstream off, I am faster than Garchomp, and I can freely target this Kartana while the Torkoal that doesn't do anything is sitting on the field. And so we see the Aerial Ace, it probably did 3 shots, so they probably did win if they didn't protect Torkoal. I get the G-Max Wildfire off and immediately get rid of this Kartana, and the Torkoal is, okay, we get the critical hit, we get the Wildfire up, so we're going to do a little more damage to that Garchomp. I probably should have counted Sun Turns a little closer, but the Torkoal goes for a Yawn, and that was when I realized I went on a roller coaster. I was like, oh my god, I can't believe I'm actually going to win this game, to, oh wow, I've lost the game. The Garchomp, of course, goes for a Protect. The Torkoal also has revealed Protect and naturally goes for the Protect as well. The Charizard is not going to do enough damage through Protect to, put these Pokemon in G-Max Wildfire range. And so at this point, I need a Minor Miracle. And by Minor Miracle, I mean I need a Rock Slide miss into a 1-turn sleep to maybe have a chance at winning the game. Of course, the Charizard does fall asleep. The Garchomp is actually at pretty low health. Like, it does have a chance to go down to 2 Wildfires if it gets like 2 Rock Slide misses, but that is such an unlikely scenario. And naturally, they do just hit the Rock Slide, and our wild set of games comes to an end. So we ended up today going 4-1. We, absolutely wild, but also probably reveals some of the weaknesses of the team. And so this was a really good learning experience, but also Charizard, crazy Pokemon, did so much, and some really fun games that I'm really excited to reflect on. So 4-1 is honestly not that bad. That being said, I think we got very lucky in some of those games. Now, again, I'll take the wins. That does get us one step closer to Master Ball rank. We are now in Ultra Ball rank, of course. We also got our 15th win, and of course are all the way up to 18 wins, which means we get another legendary Pokemon in the next episode. But more importantly, we got to learn a little bit about how this team operates with the new very powerful Pokemon like Charizard, Mesprit, and obviously we didn't run Venusaur, but we got to at least think about that. And I learned something, which is that I can't build teams with these Pokemon like I would build a team in normal VGC. No matter how hard I try, Mesprit is not Porygon 2, and so I can't lead Umbreon Mesprit and expect it to work anywhere near as well. Rather than trying to build teams that are like VGC light, I should rather build teams that try to do their own thing, try to do their own linear game plans. And while these sort of robust teams that I'm used to building probably do better in a best of 3 format, maybe do better in an open team sheet format, running ladder gimmicks is probably the way to go. Like realistically, that is going to do better on the ladder. Having a linear game plan that people don't see coming is going to do better on ladder, as we saw when we faced that Iron Defense Glastrier that, I didn't expect, and I had to play around in a totally different way. And so the other thing is that Charizard is not that good without Torkoal. Venusaur is probably less good without Torkoal as well. And so again, we shouldn't be building teams that are just weaker teams that exist in VGC. We should be trying to compete with those teams with our own innovative ways. And so that's kind of my approach moving forward. I don't think that I'm going to continue using this specific style of team. I think I want to revisit Inteleon because that is probably the fastest Pokemon that we have access to. I want to revisit, obviously we're using Rhyperior as our primary attacker. That thing is just bonkers. Rillaboom is always going to be on the team, but things like Mamoswine are probably going to be revisited. Charizard is probably going to stay on the team. I don't know. Anyways, there's a long way to go. We still have another legendary Pokemon, and we still have 3 more Pokemon to pick up in Wonder Trade next week, so the team could look totally different. That being said, I'm very excited to see how this progresses. I think I learned a lot from this episode, and I had a lot of fun. Those games were absolutely insane. They were so much fun to play, they were so much fun to commentate over, and I hope you had fun watching them. And so that's just kind of the way this series has worked. It's been a lot of fun the entire way through, and I'm excited to see what next episode holds. And so until next time, I will see you all later.